There are days when you don't lack anything. Everything seems fine. You go to work, you smile, you talk, you move through life the way you're supposed to. Nothing is obviously wrong. But when things quiet down, you can feel it. There's something missing inside. Like you've eaten, but you're still not full. Like you've had something to drink, but you're still thirsty. I've met many people living with that feeling. They've found success, they stay busy, they've even tried getting a little closer to God, and yet that sense of something's missing keeps coming back. Sometimes the problem isn't that you haven't tried hard enough. It's that you're searching for something in the wrong place. There's a question in Scripture that has always stayed with me. It's not a rebuke, it's just a question, honest and surprisingly gentle. Why do you spend for what does not satisfy? Why do you keep giving so much for things that never truly fill you? If you're willing to be honest for a moment, you might realize what's wearing you down isn't that life is too hard. It's that you keep going back to the same way of searching, hoping this time will be different, but it isn't. And if you've ever felt that way, then these words are for you. Come, all you who are thirsty, not try harder, just come. The truth is, what you're missing isn't something more. It's that you've been missing an invitation. Part 1. You've been looking in the wrong place. Isaiah 55:2. And there are people who spend years chasing what looks right and still end up empty. That's where Isaiah 55 begins. Not with a command, but with a question. Why do you spend for what does not satisfy? That question goes far beyond money. You can spend your time, your energy, your attention, pour yourself into work, into relationships, into building something meaningful, and still feel like something inside you isn't being fed. Not because those things are always wrong, but because they were never meant to carry the weight of your soul. I've seen people build their whole lives around being needed, always showing up, always giving. And for a while it feels full, until one day everything goes quiet, and they realize they're exhausted in a place that should have felt enough. I've seen people chase success with everything they have, thinking one more step will settle the restlessness. But the moment never stays, it fades, and the hunger comes back. That's the ache behind this question. You can spend, you can labor, you can give your life to something, and still not be satisfied. Because the problem isn't that you haven't tried, it's that you've been feeding a real hunger in the wrong place. And the hardest part to admit is this: sincerity doesn't guarantee satisfaction. You can be disciplined and still feel empty. You can be surrounded by activity and still feel something missing. That's why this isn't just a verse, it feels personal. God isn't speaking to people who don't care. He's speaking to people who are hungry, but keep going back to what cannot feed them. And if you're honest, you've felt that before. Going back to the same things, hoping this time it will be enough. But it never is, because what is not bread will never become bread. And what does not satisfy will never satisfy, no matter how much of yourself you give to it. So this isn't a condemnation, it's clarity. Your hunger is real, your thirst is real, but the place you've been taking it to cannot hold what your soul was made for. Part 2, the hunger that keeps coming back. There was a woman who kept going back to the same well, day after day, under the same sun, carrying the same jar. It was routine, necessary, familiar. The water she drew was real. It met a need. It got her through the day, but it never lasted. So she came back again. In John 4, that woman meets Jesus Christ, and he says something that reaches deeper than it sounds. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, not because the water was wrong, but because it could only go so far. That's the part we don't always see in our own lives. There are things we return to again and again, not because we're careless, but because they seem to work. They give us something, a sense of progress, a bit of relief, a moment where the weight lifts just enough, but it doesn't last. And when it fades, we go back. You see it in simple things. A person scrolls, thinking just a few minutes will help them unwind. But a few minutes turns into an hour, and when they stop, the quiet feels heavier than before. Or someone pours themselves into work, believing that finishing one more task will finally bring a sense of rest. But the moment passes and there's always something else waiting. It's not that these things are useless. They just can't reach deep enough. It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water. For a moment it feels like you're drinking, but the more you take in, the more the thirst grows. That's how the soul works. If the source is wrong, the cycle doesn't break. You return. You take in something. It fades, and you return again. After a while, it becomes normal, so normal that you stop questioning it. You don't ask whether the well itself is the problem. You just assume you need to draw more from it. More effort, more distraction, more control. But more of what cannot satisfy will never satisfy. And that's why this kind of hunger doesn't go away. It follows you into quiet moments. It waits behind your routines. It shows up when everything else slows down. Not to accuse you, but to reveal something you may have missed. It's not that your hunger is too much. It's that what you keep going back to was never meant to fill it. Part 3. An invitation that doesn't work the way you think. Isaiah 55:1. After everything we've just seen, you would expect God to say something like this. Try harder. Do better. Fix yourself first, then come. But that's not what he says. Isaiah 55 opens with something almost unsettling. Come, all you who are thirsty. Come to the waters, and you who have no money. Come, buy and eat. Without money and without cost. That doesn't sound like anything we're used to. Because everything in life has trained you the opposite way. If you want something valuable, you earn it. If you fail, you fix it before you come back. If you're not enough, you prove that you are. But here, God speaks to people who are still thirsty, still empty, still coming back from the wrong places. And he doesn't say, clean yourself up. He says, come. That's the part that feels almost too simple, too undeserved, too different. I've seen this before, not in church, but in ordinary life. Someone offers help, real help, no strings attached, and the first reaction isn't relief. It's hesitation. Why? What's the catch? What do I owe you? Because deep down, we don't know how to receive something we didn't earn. And that's exactly where many people stop with God. Not because he hasn't spoken, not because the invitation isn't clear, but because it doesn't fit the way they think life works. They keep trying to fix themselves first, trying to become worthy first, trying to feel ready first. And without realizing it, they walk past the very thing they've been looking for. Because the invitation isn't built on your effort, it's built on your need. Come, all you who are thirsty, not the ones who have it together, not the ones who figured it out, just the ones who are still thirsty. And maybe that's what makes this so personal, because the very thing that qualifies you is the thing you've been trying to hide. Your hunger, your emptiness, your need. In every other part of life, those feel like weaknesses. But here, they are the doorway. And if you miss that, if you try to approach God the same way you approach everything else, you'll keep searching, even while the invitation is already in front of you. Part 4. You heard it, but you didn't really listen. Isaiah 50. I've seen this happen more times than I can count. A man sits across from me tired. Not broken on the outside, but something inside has been wearing him down for a long time. We talk, slowly, honestly. At some point, he nods. Not a polite nod, a real one. The kind where you can tell he sees it now. For a moment, everything becomes clear, and before he leaves, he says, I know what I need to do. Then a week passes. Nothing changes. Same patterns, same weight, same quiet emptiness. Not because he didn't hear, but because he didn't really listen. Isaiah 55 says it in a way that almost sounds too simple. Give ear and come to me, listen, that you may live. Let me put it this way. A person can sit in a doctor's office, hear exactly what's wrong, hear exactly what will heal them, and walk out relieved for a moment. But if they don't take the medicine, nothing changes. That's what it means to listen. Not just to understand, but to step into it. I've watched people hear truth like this, feel something shift inside, and still go back to the same well the next day. Not because they're careless, because something in them holds back. Sometimes it's as simple as this. You hear come, but you stay where you are. You hear let go, but you hold on just a little longer. You hear trust, but you keep one hand on what you've always relied on. And life continues, nothing dramatic. Nothing obviously wrong. Just unchanged. That's the quiet danger. Not rejection, delay. Because every time you hear something true and don't move with it, it becomes easier to leave it behind. Until one day, you don't even feel it the same way anymore. And maybe that's where some people are right now. You've heard this before, not these exact words, but something close. You've had a moment where it felt clear, where you knew this is it. And then life kept going, and so did you. But not in a new direction, just the same one. So it's not about whether you've heard it or not, but it's about when you hear it, do you act on it? Part 5. Why we keep walking past the invitation. Isaiah 55. Let me ask you something, and you don't have to answer out loud. How many times have you felt that quiet pull and still walked past it? Not rejected it, not argued against it, just kept going. I've done that. There were moments when I knew exactly what God was inviting me into. Not a loud voice, just a quiet knowing, clear enough that I couldn't pretend I didn't hear it, and still I hesitated. Isaiah 55 says, "Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways, and he will have mercy. He will freely pardon." Do you hear how open that is? No conditions first. No fixing yourself before you come. Just return. And yet we don't, not because the invitation isn't clear, but because something inside us resists it. Sometimes it's this quiet thought. I'm not ready yet. Not now, maybe later. Let me sort a few things out first. Let me become a better version of myself, then I'll come. Have you ever said that to yourself? Or maybe it sounds different. I've gone too far. You don't say it out loud, but it sits there, like a line you crossed a long time ago, and now you're not sure you can walk back over it. So you stay where you are, still hearing, still knowing, but not moving. And sometimes it's not even guilt, it's familiarity. You've lived this way for so long, it feels normal. The same patterns, the same ways of coping, the same places you go when you're tired. They don't satisfy you, but they're familiar. And stepping away from that feels like stepping into the unknown. So you stay close to what you know, even when you know it's not enough. Let me ask you again, when was the last time you felt that gentle nudge and chose not to respond? Not because you didn't care, but because something in you held back. Listen, I'm not asking that to accuse you. I'm asking because that moment matters more than you think. Because Isaiah doesn't say, "Come when you've figured it all out." He says, "Seek him while he is near." That means there are moments when your heart is more open than usual. Moments when the noise quiets down, when something inside you becomes honest. And in those moments, the invitation feels close. Very close. But if you keep walking past it, if you keep delaying it, something begins to change. Not with God, with you. The pull becomes easier to ignore. The clarity becomes a little less sharp. The moment passes and life fills the space again. Until the next time. And maybe you're in one of those moments right now. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just clear. And the question isn't whether God is willing to receive you. That's already been answered. The question is much simpler. What are you going to do with this moment? Part 6. God is not thinking the way you think. Isaiah 55:8. There is a quiet reason many people hesitate at this point, and it's not always obvious at first. We assume God thinks the way we do, not on purpose. It just happens over time. We've been shaped by how people respond to us, how approval is earned, how mistakes are remembered, how trust can be lost. So without realizing it, we carry those patterns into the way we see God. We expect distance when we fail. We expect conditions before acceptance. We expect that we'll have to prove something, even if just a little. And because of that, the invitation starts to feel complicated. Not because it is, but because we've made it that way in our own minds. That's why Isaiah 55 says it so clearly. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways. That isn't God pulling away. That's God correcting a misunderstanding. He's saying, in the simplest way, you don't know me the way you think you do. And I've sat with people who were convinced God had already made up his mind about them, not because of something written in scripture, but because of how life had treated them. They had been let down, misunderstood, pushed aside, and over time they stopped expecting anything different from God. So when they hear come, they don't hear welcome. They hear pressure. They hear expectation. They hear something they'll eventually fail again. And I understand that. But God doesn't respond the way people do. He doesn't grow tired of you in the way others have. He doesn't keep a quiet record of how many times you've missed it. He doesn't wait for you to become someone else before he draws you near. His thoughts are higher, not distant, but different. His ways are higher, not unreachable, but deeper than what we're used to. That means the invitation you've been hearing isn't fragile. It doesn't depend on how steady you feel today. It doesn't collapse because you hesitated yesterday. It doesn't fade because you're still trying to figure things out. It remains, and maybe that's the part that takes the longest to accept. That God isn't asking you to meet him on your terms, or according to what you've learned from everything else in life. He's asking you to trust that his way of receiving you is not like anything you've experienced before. And until that shifts, until you allow him to be different from what you expect, you'll keep standing at the edge of the invitation, wondering if it's really as open as it sounds. But it is. Part 7, and still, you're thirsty. Isaiah 55:10. There's a reason this keeps coming back. Not just the feeling, but the question behind it. Why, after everything, are you still thirsty? Isaiah 55 doesn't leave that unanswered. It gives you a picture, as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it without watering the earth, making it bud and flourish. It's a simple image. Rain falls, the ground receives it, and life begins. No struggle, no forcing it, just the right source, meeting the right need. And then God says, "So is my word. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire." Do you see it? You've been thirsty, not because your hunger is too much, but because what you've been taking in was never meant to grow anything in you. You poured yourself into things. You gave your time, your energy, your attention, but nothing changed deep inside, because it never reached that place. Rain doesn't argue with the soil. It simply nourishes it. And when the right thing finally reaches the right place, life responds. That's what you've been missing. Not effort, not sincerity, but something that actually carries life into your soul. And maybe now it becomes clear. You searched, you were invited, you heard, but you didn't let it reach you. And that's why, after all this time, you're still thirsty. Not because nothing was offered, but because what was offered was never truly received. Conclusion. Let me leave you with this, not as a conclusion, but as something to sit with. After everything we've said, after all the searching, all the returning, all the moments where you heard but didn't quite step into it, the invitation hasn't changed. It hasn't weakened. It hasn't moved further away. It's still there. Isaiah 55 ends with a picture that feels almost too different from where we started. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. Joy. Peace. Not forced. Not earned. Not something you have to hold together. Given. Grown. Like life returning to a place that once felt dry. And I know, for some people that sounds distant, maybe even unrealistic, because you've lived long enough to know what it feels like to try and not see much change, to hope and then quietly adjust your expectations. So when you hear words like that, joy, peace, it's hard not to hold them at a distance. But this isn't asking you to believe in a feeling, it's asking you to respond to an invitation. Come, not tomorrow, not when everything makes sense. Now, as you are, still thirsty, still figuring things out. That hasn't disqualified you. It's the very reason the invitation is for you. So maybe don't rush past this moment. You don't need to fix everything tonight. You don't need to have all the answers. Just don't walk past it again. Because the same voice that asked you, why do you spend for what does not satisfy, is the same voice that now says, come. And if you've heard that tonight, then this moment matters more than you think. Not because of what you feel right now, but because of what you might finally do with it. So take a breath, be still for a moment, and wherever you are, in your own quiet way, come. May the Lord meet you there, gently, faithfully, and in a way that your soul will recognize. And may you find, perhaps for the first time in a long while, that the thirst you've been carrying doesn't have to follow you anymore.